Hi, folks. Welcome to Crisco's Corner. Welcome back. And those of you that are new, welcome. This is a piece from Tucker Carlson concerning Kevin McCarthy and the stalled speaker vote. I'll call it stalled. I do have to say the 20 Republicans that are holding us up have legit concerns. There's no question. And it's just a matter of how they go about fixing what they can fix and then move on and try to fix more. It's an interesting piece. I'm going to call this one accountability because Tucker's absolutely right. Many of these people and many of us in the private sector, we don't want to be accountable for anything because being accountable for something really sucks. That means you have to admit that you screwed up or you didn't do a proper job or you could have handled it better. And nobody wants to do that, especially if you're a member of Congress. So let's listen, and I'll critique as we go along.
So if you take a deep breath and you think about it for a second, nothing we have seen in Washington recently, the supposedly apocalyptic world-ending drama of politicians arguing with each other, none of it qualifies as especially unusual or even bad. This is what democracy looks like when you get up close. I want one thing, you want another thing, we schedule a vote to see who gets it, or in this case, 11 votes. But whatever, how is that a disaster? Well, it's not a disaster. It's how the system is supposed to work. But don't tell the moron community that. They're too overwrought to hear you. Watch.
An epic fail and stunning humiliation for Kevin McCarthy, who took the knee for Donald Trump, then gave away the store to the cuckoo fringe of his party.
You couldn't construct a narrative that combines the elements of extremism, election denialism, and incompetence more perfectly than the last 12 hours on the Republican side in the House.
It's embarrassing, I do, and there's a lot of hard feelings on both sides. Again, you have 90% of the caucus standing firmly behind Kevin McCarthy.
They look petty. I mean, they're putting on a show. I'll call it political porn.
Has decided instead to pull the pin on the grenade and toss it among themselves. What an extraordinary moment of political failure by a political party.
It's either personal against Kevin, or remember that this is the same brain trust that brought you almost 2 years ago, January 6th.
The way that they've gone about trying to achieve these demands has resulted in essentially this terrorist standoff between them and the overwhelming majority of people in their conference.
Oh, they're so excitable. Are you following this? The failure to make it super easy and simple for Kevin McCarthy is extremism, declares Nicole Wallace. It's just embarrassing, says Ryan Zinke. It's pornography, says another.
There you have it. The Republican side, with all their faults, and they have plenty, and I'm a Republican, former Democrat. At least this group has a lot of faults, but not all of them are cult members, unlike the Democratic side. We don't vote as a block. Now, it makes great politics, but it makes really, really crappy government. The Democrat side is the cult side. I'm sorry they are. I wish it was different. I wish they were more of a viable party. The Republicans are the best we're going to get for right now. We're going to have to see what happens. Let's listen on.
There is this widespread myth among many of my conservative brethren that being electable makes you more moderate, that being electable makes you part of the establishment. There is no frickin' establishment. If there was an establishment, this wouldn't be happening. Kevin McCarthy would be, by almost any objective measure, one of the 2 or 3 most conservative Republican speakers in U.S. history, at least for the last 100 years. Paul Ryan was the most conservative speaker. This idea that being part of the establishment makes you a rhino squish loser is this fantasy that these guys are getting high on their own farts and like Fox green rooms on. And it's nonsense.
Unbelievable. There's no establishment. There's no underlying uniparty that keeps spending money they don't have. I mean, they put $100,000 in one of the grants from the last, was it $1.7 trillion bill? They gave billions to Ukraine. They spent over $100,000 to do a study to see if Thanos could really click his fingers. Remember, Thanos is the one who was going to get rid of half the population in the universe. That's actually true. And you can go on with that. It's amazing to me. The 20, I call them rebels, and I say that in a good way, in a proud way, is saying this is enough. This is enough. We can't do this anymore. Let's finish up with Tucker here, and I'll make a comment.
There's one thing that Washington hates on a bipartisan basis. It's accountability. And unfortunately, the Republican Party is no different in that. No one is ever punished for failure or ever forced to explain how those failures happen. And as a result of that lack of accountability, no one ever improves. Everybody just keeps getting rewarded for producing the same disasters. Think about that. If you raised your kids like that, they'd be in prison. So maybe the main thing that's making people mad is that. Republican voters see the same people in charge producing the same mediocre results, paying a lot more attention to lobbyists than to them. That's not democracy, actually. It's the opposite of democracy. And watching this drives them insane. It's a fair bet that most people don't hate Kevin McCarthy as a man. He's no Mitch McConnell. Pretty nice guy, actually. But most normal people do hate the system that keeps promoting Kevin McCarthy for turning in a subpar performance.
And there you have it. That's exactly right, Tucker. That's exactly right. Subpar performance. If I had a small business for over 20 years. Anybody that's employed anybody, or even not just been an employee, if you put up with the people around you to be that bad at what they do and never be held accountable, and not only they held unaccountable, they're given praise and raises. They've become millionaires when they get out of the office, the vast majority of them. That's the point. The average American looks at this and says, you know what? It's like that line from Network. I'm mad as hell and I'm not taking it anymore. But the American people have been mad for a long time and nothing's changed. Nothing has changed. And these 20 rebels, and I say that with pride, these 20 rebels are saying this is enough. Now, is it going to matter? I mean, it's like Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Those remember that old Jimmy Stewart movie. This is very similar. It's very similar, but it's real life. It's real life. When are these people going to be held accountable? And the ones that employ them are us. The uniparty, as that guy said, no establishment. You got to be out of your mind. The lobbyists and the money people control everything. Has money controlled a lot of society in this country since its inception? Sure. But not like this. Not like this. There are two separate parties, and they got to start acting like one. It's amazing to me. Absolutely amazing. Think about who you vote for next time. Think hard and long. Your life may depend on it. Accountability. When you screw up, you need to be called on the carpet. Until next time, goodbye and good luck.